there's certain policies that the Liberals announce and re-announce and re-announce. They don't really do anything about it, but they love the announcement. Of course, taking guns off our streets is one of them. They don't actually succeed in taking guns off our streets because the guns that are used by criminals are impervious to announcements by politicians. Isn't that funny? I mean, they go after legitimate gun owners, including hunters, farmers, ranchers, sportsmen, but they never seem to quench or to put out the fire of the crime wave across this country, especially in the big cities. I note that the federal government had an idea to buy back the guns. And, you know, I suppose there's a germ of an idea there. If gangsters are trying to get rich by using their guns to rob places, maybe they would accept money for their weapons. Well, their entire project in Cape Breton, where they had a pilot project, yielded a grand total, get this, of 25 guns. Not 2,500 or 25,000, but 25, like a dozen and a baker's dozen. Like I've probably eaten that many donuts on a bad day. 25. And by the way, they spent an average of $7,000 managing this program per gun. And yet they've set up a new program. They've agreed to fund the province of Quebec $12.4 million to do the same again. Now, I don't know if they're going to pull in more than 25 firearms, but that would be $500,000 per gun. I remember there was a movie, a James Bond movie called The Man with the Golden Gun. Maybe they're thinking they're going to buy a few of those for $500,000. I don't know. I think that guns are a whipping boy for the Liberals. They don't actually solve the problem, but they like to distract. But joining me now is someone who follows this file closely. His name is Daniel Fritter, and it's a delight to join him again. Daniel, great to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
We were just talking before the camera went on about how firearms policy looks in 2026. Is that something that Mark Carney has focused on, or is it sort of going still on the inertia from the Justin Trudeau years? I mean, Carney is basically at his 1-year anniversary now. Has he done anything himself, or is it just sort of what was left over from the previous administration?
He hasn't done anything per se, but he did mention specifically during his campaign that he was going to maintain the quote unquote buyback program and that he was going to efficiently and in a cost effective manner buy them back. He hasn't made any new policy announcements. It feels like there's inertia, and there is inertia because within public safety through the department where all of this is kind of emanating from, the buyback program has been the single largest source of new hires. So there's a ton of people, there's 153 of them to be specific, whose jobs are managing this program. They obviously want to remain employed, so it's in their interest to keep pushing this thing forward. So whatever Mark Carney wants, I think I, like many gun owners, was surprised that he reiterated, doing this. Cancel the carbon tax, but keep this going. Kind of seems weird. But there is a lot of inertia within public safety to keep this thing going. And I think that's what we're seeing with Quebec specifically now.
Well, 153 hires is insane. And again, if you apportion that to Cape Breton, that's 6 government employees per gun that was bought back. Now, I know that they're doing other things and they weren't all focused on that, but it's sort of laughable. I remember when Alan Rock brought in the gun registry, this would be about 30 years ago now, and the prices just absolutely ballooned. What was supposed to be in the tens of millions soon was in the billions. I don't know, maybe that's the actual purpose of Canadian gun control, not to take criminal guns off the streets, but to provide a unlimited employment for anti-gun activists. I mean, I suppose the anti-gun industry doesn't have to succeed to make money. In fact, I suppose like a lot of other industries, like the welfare industry or the drug rehabilitation industry, if they were actually to succeed in Canadian public policy, then a lot of do-gooders and NGOs would be out of work. Maybe they fail on purpose.
Well, I think, to refer back to what you were saying earlier, the government loves the announcements. And guns are a very popular whipping boy, especially these days where they can pitch guns as largely an American sort of thing, where a lot of Canadians are feeling anti-American sentiment. It leverages that sort of specific issue. And it's frustrating because as a gun owner and as someone who has been in this industry for 15 years now, I used to do media interviews like this, and they would largely be predicated on the notion of how are we doing it right? There'd be a massive thing in the States where a bunch of people got killed, and then I would do an interview where the journalist would go, why doesn't that happen in Canada? And I would explain, because we had previously a very resilient system of controlling who is allowed to own a gun, because we don't have the Second Amendment. You got to get a license. It's rigorous. You get checked every day. But we don't say what kinds of gun you can specifically own. We control who owns them. But that seems to have been abandoned, and it's broken the trust, I think, between gun owners and the government, and in some ways the public, because as gun owners, we're watching the public vote for a government who continues to not seem to care, that makes the announcement the key instead of actually trying to keep people safe. Like you said, they spent $2 billion on the long gun registry. It saved 0 lives. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars on the gun bans that have occurred since 2025 or 2020. And no one is safer for it. It's a shame.
I saw something that has a strong counter narrative. A few weeks ago, the top brass at the Canadian Armed Forces had this idea of sort of I don't know, not really a reserve, but of turning, that's right, bureaucrats into a kind of reserve. Yep. Where, I just imagine these, I just in my mind, these middle-aged lifer government sector union workers who are used to working like as a clerk somewhere, sort of the kind of people you meet at the Department of Motor Vehicles, who are not in a rush to anything, who say, oh, I'm still on my break for 90 seconds, I won't answer your question. Like they want to recruit, I think they said hundreds of thousands of them, to be this like militia or something, I'm guessing, to defend against some American invasion that in their fever dreams they think is imminent. So all of a sudden, having a gun and shooting a gun is cool and necessary and patriotic. It's a way to keep out the evil Donald Trump and his Greenland brigades. What did you make it? Did you pay attention to that at all? Like, I think they sort of dropped that, but I thought it was pretty weird from people who like to ban guns. I saw it. I thought it was pretty laughable. Obviously, I'm laughing because I'd forgotten that even was a thing. But it also harkens back to the notion that when they announced these bans, it was around the same time as, the government was getting elected on largely we need to oppose this 51st state rhetoric. And they were saying we're going to send the guns to Ukraine. And it's the same logic of, Ukraine's being invaded by Russia, which is bad. So let's send guns there. But also we need to take the guns away from Canadians because we might be getting invaded by America. It was a very strange thing. That also died because it was a similarly laughable notion. But this notion of, the civil service becoming an armed militia at the same time as they can't even figure out how to take the guns away from people that have them is just you talk about skill gaps. That's a pretty big one for a government that can't figure out how to take guns away from people who legally own them, to say we're going to arm the entire government with guns. I mean, I can imagine them. It's so silly. This doesn't even feel like a real country thing to be talking about. Like, I would be afraid they would use those guns against Canadian citizen customers who were a little too eager in saying, how come I'm still waiting in line? Like I could imagine if you armed every public sector bureaucrat in Canada, the chief destination of any gunfire would be at customers who are a little impatient. I just think it would be like, it's psychologically the absolute worst people in the world you would want to give guns to. I forgot about the point you said that the Liberals had said they were going to seize guns from ordinary farmers, ranchers, hunters, and give them to Ukraine, which is in the middle of the toughest war in memory, where they don't have little plink, plink, plink guns. They're using horrific machines of war. I mean, it's a lot of drone warfare, but they're not using the kind of guns that Canadian farmers using. They're using war guns. And I think that the Canadian government has fooled itself because they talk about we're going to ban assault-style weapons, and they don't even know what that means. They just think if something is black and has a plastic stock and looks scary, that's an assault-style weapon. So obviously that's how we defend Ukraine against Russia. I think that what that reveals is that the people making firearms policy in Canada probably have never seen a firearm, touched a firearm, know anything about firearms. They just, like you said, like I said before, it's just about the press release. And that was, what's cool right now, Ukraine. Okay, we're going to seize the guns and give them to Ukraine. That's so cool. That's going to go crazy viral on Twitter. I think that's the level of policy depth of our Liberal government.
It's government by TikTok is what it feels like. And I mean, I don't know if this is still the case because not surprisingly, no one within the Department of Public Safety has opened a good channel of communication with me for some time. But that wasn't always the case. And even going back to while the Liberals were still in government, there was a staffer in public safety who worked for Ralph Goodale, who would call me and talk to me about gun policy because working in the gun industry. And he freely admitted he was the only person in the entire office that had a gun license. And he no longer works there. So I would hazard a guess that no one there has a gun license. And I think that you are absolutely correct in that these people, they don't know guns. They've hired 153 people. These are new hires. It also has notably shifted the entire demographic of public safety staff to a younger age. They are young people who don't have a gun license, who don't basically nothing about guns, who have gotten a job in the government dictating gun policy. And it's kind of insane when you actually think about it, because this is a key component of public safety, like national defense. Guns are an important thing. You cannot have a bunch of people making policy about them who have no experience and no knowledge about it. It'd be like saying the Minister of Transport is a guy who's never driven a car. Or the Minister of the Environment is a guy who was a Greenpeace activist, which is basically where we're at. So, we're on the other side of that glass, I guess.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, listen, it's great to catch up with you, Daniel Fritter. What's the best way for people to follow you and your work?
Twitter, Instagram. We're doing more Facebook. CalibreMag.ca is our website, and all those social media handles. It's all just Calibre Mag.